Appleton Police Chief answering questions about the safety of the city's downtown after that deadly shooting of a 22-year-old on Christmas Eve.
Many witnesses have been interviewed, but as Samantha Qualley tells us, police say at this time no arrests have been made in a very active investigation.
It was unexpected on Appleton. Appleton is a peaceful place, honestly. Everybody here is so kind.
At about 2 a.m. on Christmas Eve, Manuel Almenza was working at the Diablo's Taco Truck on the corner of Walnut Street and College Avenue, finishing up his last few orders of the night.
And suddenly we hear noises of people yelling outside. So when we saw through the window, we saw people fighting, a couple of guys. Seconds later, we hear the gunshots, and we saw to this poor guy, we saw the scene.
The victim, 22-year-old Elijah Dodson of Milwaukee, died at a nearby hospital. With the suspect still not in custody, Chief Polly Olson issued a letter to the community letting people know the department is working around the clock to gather as much information as possible.
We monitor our social media very closely, and we certainly can pick up on thoughts that people were having in terms of not feeling safe coming downtown, and we felt it was important to address that. 4
extra officers every Friday and Saturday night will be on College Avenue along with the other officers already on patrol duty. She says the department is working on identifying other witnesses as well as reaching out to local businesses who may have seen anything.
If there is anybody that is watching this and feels like maybe they should step forward and share information, that would be very helpful.
In Appleton, Samantha Qualley, Action 2 News.